Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. Well, the way I could describe this show is a little bit of a smorgasbord. We're going to bring you a little bits and pieces of a lot of stuff we've done that we didn't get a chance to air. And I think that'll be helpful to get you moving towards the fall session of the 2006 sail racing season. That said, we wanted to first congratulate Chris Duhon for winning a GL-52 fleet overall title. And we had a chance to talk to Chris at length. We're going to bring you that interview. We wanted to congratulate him on his victory. It was well earned, and we certainly want to have a chance to let him explain his season. And we did that just before the U-Gotta-Regattta race. We didn't get a chance to use it, but we're going to use that now. We also had a couple of comments from some guys that were on the Mac race, the Port Huron Mac race, that we didn't get a chance to use in reference to the difficult conditions with more than 50% of the fleet passing. We want to get that to you guys. I think it'll be fun. We're also going to explore a 3-week series or a 3-show series on paper yacht clubs. And we're going to start with Kevin Srigley all the way up in Petoskey, a brand new club that for 2 years old already has more than 400 members. And I think that'll be fun to talk to Kevin a little bit. We talked to him from the Petoskey Yacht Club and from the Petoskey Harbor right there in Little Traverse Bay. So we'll get a chance to do that as well. We've got a few things along the way that we're going to bring you and some cool information. We're going to give you an update on the America's Cup, and we're also going to talk a little bit about, it's hard to explain this, but transient boating as it relates to yacht clubs and some prices that I thought were, I talk about sticker shock from the 60s, 70s, and 80s related to cars. We'll have that discussion with you in just a couple seconds. So up next is Chris Duhon, and we'll bring that to you in a couple seconds. Welcome back. We're getting a chance to spend a couple of seconds talking to Chris Duhon. We had a little bit of a video after the Chicago to Mac win. We're now post Mac and Port Huron to Mac race. You were fortunate enough to win first place in the Chicago race, and not so lucky in the Port Huron race. So let me start backwards with this. One of the stats that I noticed, which I thought was interesting.
Sure.
All of a sudden, you were the first. You had broken the record to Mac, but then I realized they'd only put that new starting line in the 5 miles along the shore, and it was started last year. Set you broke it, but you sailed 312 miles as compared to 329 miles to your second place opponent. And if you're sailing 20 miles less than your opponent, you guys must have had a heck of a navigation going, because it's probably contributed, I think, to your win. Am I right on that?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is right. But so let me touch on the first part of that, the record in quotes. Chicago Yacht Club put a turning mark in the Skyline mark, which just made a little bit of a different course. So it's kind of a technicality. I don't want to take anything from Maverick or from, of course, Disney's Pyewacket, who set the record that we all chased for so many years. I was on that run where Maverick crossed the line first and earned that record. But 452s or 552s basically broke the old Pyewacket record as well, which was pretty legendary. So to beat the actual elapsed time record to the island is a little different than just a course record.
I get
but if you change the course, like Bayview knows, there's like 7 different records. Shore course, Cove Island, the 100th, all that stuff. You've got different records. Askew has the 100th run because he finished a couple seconds in front of us, but we corrected over him to win that on the Bayview. But these are things that I know CYC is going to review it and see what they think. I've seen it out there, and guys have thrown comments out there all the time that we broke the record. Right now I would say let CYC review it and we'll move from there. But we're humbled and honored just to be able on a Chicago Mac to be we call it the trifecta: first to finish, corrected first in class and then a corrected first in the division, which is pretty rare. But these 52s, when they get lit up, can do things like that. And then the next part of that is the navigation. Yeah, we had a great thing going. I think the second place overall was a J111, but Nally J, Phil and Bora, and the team did exactly kind of what I would have done. Maybe one exception, but everything else was in there. When you get into the decision to go inside or outside the Manitous on a 52, if you're a couple miles back and there's wind outside the Manitous, then the lead boat makes a decision and you're going to split from it. We did that on that race that I just talked about where Maverick set the record. Nally J walked in, was about 4 to 3.5 miles in front of us and went inside and we went outside. So for me, being in the lead by, I think we're 5.7 miles in front as we entered the Manitous, we chose to go inside but protect, which means we gave up some of the distance. We knew there was better wind on the outside, but we thought that the wind would hold inside enough to not make up for the distance. And when Nally J came back at us after the Foxes, after they went outside and we stayed inside on this MAC race, we actually, they gained outside the Manitous, they lost outside the Foxes, so we ended up being basically in the same spot. After that, it's a tough decision. Do you go after incremental wins and follow the boat in front of you, or you do try to take the true epic legendary flyer that if it pays off, you're the hero of the century, which is outside of Beaver Island? And Nally J decided to do that, and it didn't work out for them because we had a storm and a lot of pressure inside, and we were able to do a lot of distance forward. And that's kind of where we kind of overtook them in a way that if the straits didn't shut down, which they were kind of shutting down, but if the straits didn't shut down there, it's kind of over at that point, as long as you can get to the finish line. But I don't fault them. I mean, that's a really tough decision because we all know it on all of these boats. When you're out front like this in the top three, the one who finishes first is the one that matters. So you're going to swing for the fences at that point. The other tactical call that Nally J had at that point, like we had, was the next boat was 20 something miles behind us. So, you're going to protect second. Right. You're pretty much there.
No, I get that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits of doing what they did at that moment in time. On paper, normally no one would ever do that, but we understood it on our boat and our team as a calculated call that wasn't just some crazy flyer just to see if you could pull it off. It actually was very calculated.
I've never asked this question, but it kind of hits me. If I hit 300 in baseball, I'm an all-star. If I'm a goalie and I save 64% of my saves, I make the first team, all NHL. How much of picking navigation, how much is it luck? And I don't mean luck as in you're obviously taking all the information in and looking at all the weather and looking at all the charts and the rest of it. But is there there's got to be a certain level of skill, but at the same time, luck that Mother Nature holds, or whatever the contingencies or whatever the context might be. Is that a fair question?
I think luck is taking advantage of what's presented to you more than it is just blind luck. If that makes sense. I like your references to baseball. I like your references to baseball because I talk about it with a nav and tactician all the time. If you bat 500, which is you hit half the balls that are thrown at you or that you swing at, you're in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I mean, you're one of the most legendary hitters of all time. So, on the Chicago Mac race, I feel like our team, the whole team managed the race really well, but the afterguard did some pretty amazing calls and kept us in the hunt. Early in the race, we had a race a couple years ago that was formulating up very similar. Heartbreaker Windquest kept driving into the beach in Michigan, towards Michigan, and myself, Nally J, and I forget who else, all tacked away, and they got parked up for like a half a day. So on this race, when we're driving into the beach, they tacked away a little early, or we thought they tacked away a little early. Us on Mockingbird and Nally J drove in the beach a little harder. Once Nally J tacked, we were going to keep going, but we decided, hey, look, we should cover from here and protect the fleet. So we went a little farther than tacked. That's actually that plus the execution of just normal sailing and everything, but as a strategy tactics call, that's what pushed us out in front early. And this is one of those races that I've never done this in any distance race that I've actually led. You know, we had a great start, which we feel confident we could say we basically won on the Chicago Mac. The first turning mark we won. The race to Betsy we won. The Inter Manitus we won. The exit of Grays we won. The bridge we won. So therefore the finish we won. It's really different when I've never had that where we haven't had one position change on the leaderboard, on that side of the leaderboard. And that's really tough. I mean, it's a different mentality too, because at some point you're going to want to cover the fleet. Anyways, sorry, but tactics wise, I think, I think luck sometimes is what you make it. And yes, you're right. There is a degree of being in the right place at the right time. There's a degree of being fast enough to get to the next wind or not slow enough to get parked, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. And so if you can stick to your plan and stay on it and your team is able to perform with the wind and wave set that you've got in front of you, then, if the forecast holds, that's all the things that come into play. And we're always updating and changing that plan. So, this one, especially the Chicago Mac, it seemed like every time we updated, changed the plan, it was small variations to our plan, not major ones. And that really helps. I can rewind back to Queen's Cup this year and talk about how we were waiting for a very large shift that never came. And we were able to luckily fight back and stay in second. If we got the shift, we would have won. We didn't get the shift. We were lucky enough to hold second. So
I think sometimes luck is, when they talk about being in the zone, athletes will talk about that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the confidence and the concentration you're doing at the moment, that maybe it's just sometimes your concentration is a little better. I know as a coach, I can make changes and the other coach doesn't know what I'm doing. And it's that concentration that you're spending that time at. And you got lucky to win. Well, maybe so, or maybe I changed defenses. And it's just one of those circumstances that works out in both directions. So I get that 100%.
So the only change I'll say is that, sailboat racing is one of the very few team sports that you also have a platform and you have a mechanical entity, the boat. And so sometimes you can push it as hard as you can, and then sometimes you got to back off it. And in that process, sometimes things don't work out well, no matter how much maintenance and time and energy you put into the boat. There's times where things just don't, it's a mechanical object, things fail. So with that, I mean, that's some of the stuff too, is how you limp through that, how you protect the asset, those kind of things. We were really good in Chicago, where we only lost one halyard and we blew up one spinnaker. If you would have told me at the start of that race that we'd lose a halyard and a spinnaker, we'd have the result we have, I'd bring on the boat and say, which halyard, which spinnaker, or do you want them all?
I get it.
As long as we can stay out in front.
When you said that this is the only sport you have a platform, all I started thinking about is, you're right. I've never seen a horse race with two jockeys on a horse. Although that might be an interesting new sport, put two guys on it. Have a weight consideration.
Well, maybe the races where they drag the chariot behind, or maybe I would say only team sport. Let's say auto racing, stuff like that, has a platform that you got to push, but it's not a team pushing it. I mean, I don't know of anything else that fits that zone. Of course, I'm sure we'll hear thousands of people say stuff from now on.
Sure,
but that's kind of been my mentality the whole time. Is it's like to me it's more like a Division I college team that you're the manager of and also a participant in, and then you have this boat platform mechanical object that you've got to keep up in tip top shape, and sails and lines, and there's a lot that goes into it that a lot of people don't appreciate sometimes.
So switching from glory to indecision in this particular case, has there been I guess the two questions to start with in terms of the Port Huron race? I don't think I've ever seen, at least in my brief understanding, I don't think I've ever seen two races with different outcomes weather-wise, number one. And number two, we were watching Yellow Brick and all of a sudden we see Mockingbird take a left-hand turn. What goes into the decision? And is this the worst weather you've seen in a while in either of the races?
A couple years ago, we were in a really set of really bad storms on Bayview, where we chose the middle line. We were able to get our kite down there, but it was one heck of a job. We ripped the helm step off the other side of the boat. You know, uh, Heartbreaker went towards shore a little bit and had damage to their rig that showed up later at U-Gotta. Nally J went outside and had damage to their rig, unfortunately. And so we were able to limp through. Heartbreaker won that against us, but we've seen some really nasty storms on the lakes, and even Chicago side had some really nasty stuff hit us up before Gray's Reef and into Gray's Reef. The issue with this was, I'm not saying this wasn't, it definitely wasn't easy weather. And the wave set made it tougher on a lot of boats. Going upwind makes it very tough, especially on boats that are designed to reach and really run hard. I think we we had the same plan. We started pretty well. We got off the line really well. We got out. We had a reef set on Bayview. We shook it out when it got light, and when we tried to put it back in, we had a mechanical failure. So, it's what it is. I mean, you still have to think about, are you going to damage the platform of the boat more? Are you going to be safe? We lost the ability to hoist up to a reef, way before we turned. What people don't know. So we were sailing with just a jib and pacing. We were basically, in my opinion, we were tied up boat for boat, pretty close when we tried to set the reef. We lost a little bit on Nally J. We think, every 24 we owed them like 11 seconds. So even though we were about a bow, we were a little bit behind them. We're probably 20 seconds behind them on the course. We were in front of Heartbreaker. And we sailed that way for a good 35, 45 minutes to sort things out, and then made a decision to keep going. And then when we started inspecting the main, we had some damage on the main. The gaff pattern was what made us not be able to reef. So it becomes a really bummer because, our plan was to wait and subside, when the winds drop down under 25 to reset the main up full hoist and just leave it full hoist from there. And when we saw the gaff pattern damage, we knew we'd damage the rig more, or the potential was bad. So we hung there till the winds kind of started slowing down. Then we said, all right, let's try to go to starboard for a little bit, see if we can hang. Wave set was pretty nasty. And then you have to make the decision, is it worth breaking the boat knowing that you're going to struggle and probably be in 5th, 6th, 7th? We could have done it. We could have kept going, but we couldn't do it with the main. And then when it got light, it would be a real struggle to finish. So to protect the asset and the platform, we turned down and called abandonment. And this is only my 3rd race we've ever withdrawn from, so it's pretty tough for me. But the boys are doing a great job right now. We're getting ready for U-Gotta and had to do a delivery all the way back up Port Huron to Mackinac, and around the corner they're in Charlevoix right now. And that's the thing. I mean, I went on the dock and congratulated Nally J for a great race. They were, they didn't have a mechanical breakage, but they didn't try to put a reef in. And there's reasons, every time you put a reef in, every sailor knows there's some risk. We went with what we felt was a safe option, and it became unsafe. Heartbreaker did a great job because they fought back and gave Nally J one heck of a run for money. And we knew Hooligan was going to be in the fight if they could round the top mark close to him. And sure enough, they were really in the fight with Rating Band. So, yeah, congrats to all those guys and everybody else that finished. I mean, it was on the fleet, it was pretty epic. I think on some boats, the wave set's a lot harder. And it was hard on us, but on some boats and some designs, it's even worse. So I feel for those guys and girls that had to retire because of wave set. When we got back down to Port Huron, we got to see what we can be thankful for. There were, to my knowledge, I saw 4 or 5 boats that were dismasted. Trident had ripped out their jib tack completely out of the deck. I mean, there's a hole in the front of their boat, so there's some damage there that's pretty awful. And it's heart-wrenching to see, no matter if you're on a 52 or if you're on an Express 27 or Beneteau 367, all things I've sailed before. It's awful to see anybody go through that kind of damage on their boats, no matter what their team is or isn't. I mean, that goes without saying. I mean, these weather systems in the Great Lakes are pretty brutal at times, and you've got to keep life and safety first.
I checked. I just crazy, but I checked Yellow Brick when how many times I'd actually gone on Yellow Brick in that 38 hours, and it was like over 80. Which I was literally on my phone. I was checking every 15 minutes to see where it's going through it. And I learned something I didn't realize is that when, especially the last, I think they came in about 10:47, something like that, 10:11, somewhere around just before 11 o'clock. They update periodically Yellow Brick so you can see the boats move, and it's about every 20 seconds online when you're watching on a computer. So you see these lines going, and so now I'm staring at Yellow Brick, waiting for the next 30 seconds to come to see what the next tack was going to be. I said I've officially become obsessed with the stupidity of watching this thing when I could have just gone to sleep and found out the next day that they had taken care of it. So it is what it is. But the question I want to ask you, relationship, you kind of talk about the platform and the rest of it. So this is a relatively intellectual decision as compared to an emotional decision to pull out of a race. As you pointed out, you've only pulled out of 3 races. So the overwhelming evidence sort of kind of forces your hand, for lack of a better way of putting it. Is that fair to say that way?
I think so. I mean, I'm very blessed and lucky to have the team that I sail with. I can just say that the team I have on the boat with me is they don't quit. And and I mean, from every one of us, we've gone through some pretty rough races before. So I was lucky that no injury, no issue with team. So now we have to talk about, whether or not we can keep going and are we competitive? That's the third discussion. The first discussion is, are we going to keep breaking stuff? And without heel angle with a main up and you're slamming on waves, you could break a ring frame, you could do some damage to the hull of the boat. So
Okay.
there's a discussion there that you go through that you kind of calculate. It is a more calculated decision. A lot of teams, like as soon as the main couldn't go back up, are like, okay, we're retiring. No, we took it down. We looked at it, we rolled it up, we put it on the boom, we put the boom up high. When we realized we couldn't go all the way up with it, we're like, okay, now let's talk about retiring. Or can we fight here? Can we keep going? Those are the decision processes that, to me, that's a really hard position to be in, and knowing that you have a team that can continue, but also knowing that you could damage the boat worse is the hard part. And that's, I never want to be in front of a board of sailors saying, so you've got these guys with all this experience on your boat that said stop, and why did you say keep going, Chris? Well, because I'm a Great Lakes sailor, and I know a little bit, and I want to win a trophy. That's the wrong answer. It's always about protecting the people and keeping the platform ready for the next fight.
Yeah, no, I get that. That makes perfect sense.
And it doesn't take anything about the toughness away from my guys or the toughness away from the people that did finish. I mean, I think that this race was a very difficult race. I think Bob Hughes said something with Heartbreaker that it's one of us was his toughest max in a very, very long time, if not ever. I know Phil and Bora and the team did a great job on Alley J. So
I always thought,
I just wish we were up there in the fight. I think we would have shown something different.
No, I get that, but I also, as a long-term coach, I can tell you that I think tough is fighting cancer. It's certainly not anything to do with relationships to sport. You participate in sport, and I'm not saying you don't tough it out and all the vernacular that goes with it, but you make good decisions, especially with situations where life and death can be, part of that discussion. And I can tell you, having been on the back of a couple of 52s with the loads and with all of the precise activity that goes on those boats, you better make sure you make the right decision, because things can go bad quickly. And I think of Eric Weinsman and Usual Suspects. It just literally in a matter of a second, there goes the entire mast, not because of anything you did or calculated incorrectly. Mother Nature just kind of reared up and said, bang, and here we go. And I think sometimes you've got to, I think.
Well, it's like, I mean, it's Sagamore on the pre-start. They try to set something up and it broke. I mean, it's a true bummer. I mean, we all put a lot of energy, time money aside, every one of us, every one of the sailors that retired, every team had a similar discussion for whatever reason, first, are our people safe? Second, are we, are we safe to continue? Third, is the platform safe? It's pretty obvious to say no, the platform is not safe when you've broken the rig or the prod's broken, like Eric Wiseman's had to go through, which is sad.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to say, oh wait, we could break this, or probably will. That's the problem child discussion. That's the hard one to balance between the two.
Yeah.
But we've all had to be there, unfortunately, in multiple things. There was a post I read about this Bayview Mac that I really liked, and it came out of Tim Proffitt's Fast Tango team that had a man overboard, had blown up a kite, had all this stuff, and then hit the storms. And they said something to the effect of finishing is not guaranteed, and it's a benefit, and of course trophies and prizes are on top of that. But really and truly, it's about the people, and I can't say it enough that's how I've always felt. It is an absolute bummer to retire from this race, especially when we were pacing out front like we were. But we'll be back for U-Gotta, and we'll fight the fight and move on. And it's just what it is. It's part of sailboat racing, unfortunately, when you get hit by something like this.
If you watch this later in the show, you'll see that we had conversations with all kinds of people that had difficulty and just their observations of what had happened in the Port Huron Mac race. And it's interesting is that the worse the weather gets, the more the solace and the common sense kind of comes in, and looking at it as maybe less than worrying about anything other than surviving, because it's just one of those things. And I think you get calm when the world sort of kind of comes up and swallows you, which is what sometimes weather does. It was very interesting listening to all the contemplation of people kind of saying, okay, it's what it was. We're still here. We had a good time. And I go back to the one part is that not one person got hurt. So
that's the best thing. That's the best thing of both Macs. To my knowledge, nobody got hurt and all the craziness that happened. I mean, well, people have bumps and bruises and things like that, maybe a broken finger here or there, but everybody's safe. Like, everybody's alive, everybody's safe. I don't want to take away from that. That says a lot about the fleet we race in.
Yeah.
The prairie sailors, as someone coined a long time ago, we are a little bit different and tougher because things come up quicker. But at the same time, it's like, these two races had two sets of pretty aggressive storms in them.
Yeah.
Both Chicago and Bayview. And depending on where you were on the track, those storms hit you very differently. On Chicago, we watched the storms kind of reform as we were sitting close to Beaver Island, and had some pretty blast reaches. I saw something I've never seen before in a storm cells, which I had an outflow behind the storm after it calmed down. And that's what almost took our race there. On Bayview, though, we all kind of knew it was going to be rough. We knew the wave set in the fetch was really bad. We didn't go out there with thinking that it was going to be a milk run in any way, shape, or form. And the wave sets were big. The wind was big, but all of the teams were pretty prepped to go for that. And, with us, unfortunately, having the top of the main unzip when we're doing a reef, it's something that you have little double plates up there. One of them failed, and that's just kind of how it goes. It's unfortunate, but the real unfortunate thing was the gap batten problem, because once we had that, it's just, you're over. You're going to rip apart the main and possibly the rig. So
last question. And it just hit me again. Sometimes it just pops in my head, these questions. You sail for competition? Do you sail for ego? Do you sail for enjoyment? What is the common denominator for you inside your brain when nobody else is around? What motivates you to do this every summer?
I think my wife asked that same question of me a million times.
And the answer is?
Well, I think, enjoyment is a big thing. I really, truly love being a part of a team sport like I used to be going into college and early years of college. I think the ego isn't there for me. I'm not that. At least I don't think I am. I might be. Some other people might think differently. But for me, it's more about the love of the sport.
Okay.
And I do truly will say this. This platform, this 52 platform, is such a fantastic, fun boat to sail and drive. It comes with a lot of negatives, but at the same time, it's one of those things that just it is an enjoyment factor. And I am an extremely competitive human being, so that comes into it too. I will get bored quickly if things are different. If it's the old statement: if it was easy, everybody would do it. Well, then I wouldn't be doing this. So those are kind of the two. I think it's the love of the sport and the competitiveness of it primarily.
Yeah. We have had a little bit of an experience this summer with a Cape 31, and one of the things you learn quickly about from a 34-hour day to a Cape 31, you find out that your level of talent is far below what you should be, and now multiply that times 21 more feet on a 52. And you recognize
Cape 31, I have one of them. I have one of them as well. I think you know that. And I love that boat. It is the dinghy version of the 52.
Yeah, but you better know how to sail it. You better know how to sail it, right?
Yeah, it does try to wipe you out when a puff hits you, and it does park up when there's a light spot. So it's a very dynamic boat. It's more dynamic even than a 52.
I want to thank Chris Duhon for coming aboard and spending some time with us, and congratulate his whole crew. You can see the picture behind me. They were happy, they were fun, and they enjoyed the race. We had some comments that we talked about at the U-Gotta-Regattta about the Port Huron, the Bayview's Port Huron and Mac race. And there was a couple of comments that we didn't get a chance to run that we want to run now. And I think it's really cool insight as to how that race ran. And again, we talked earlier in the show about a smorgasbord, but we're going to bring you those comments right now. Just I think they're interesting, and I think they're timely.
That was a tough one. I hadn't seen sailing conditions like that for 41 years. I was in the 85 race. We dropped out of that one. I was sailing on my dad's boat. This year was very tough. 10-foot seas, pretty consistent, very confused seas. We had breaking waves occasionally, like a 12-foot or a 14-foot wave, but they got that high and they would break. And so we were in Class C on a boat called Turbo Gary, which is a FAR 11S. It's a canting keel boat with dagger boards and twin rudders and all that. Real fun boat, high performance boat. Kind of outsails its length, certainly. And had a great start and kind of punched out, controlling. And we sailed through a squall line with low visibility, and then it kind of faded after that, got real confused and light, like all the air got sucked out of the area.
But talking to you about a dozen folks, there just seems to be this sort of humbleness. Mother Nature obviously spoke a lot for 8 or 9, 10 hours.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting reading Facebook blogs and reading just comments and seeing pictures and things. It had a really humbling effect to the crowd that Mother Nature can once in a while blow. Is that a fair estimation?
Yeah, I mean, we had a crew of 7, and we picked up a couple of crew last minute. We had a young man who showed himself to be a good bow guy. I mean, capable bow guy, but not as much experience as some of us. And so he got seasick. We've all been through it. It's the worst place to be. But yeah, he was sick for a long time, dry heaving, and got dehydrated. And so that person was down. And then we had another very capable crew, kind of all-purpose crew that joined us. And so we were unfamiliar, but she worked out well. And later on, we got hit by a rogue wave, and she and another one of our crew got swept out of the lifelines where we're hiking out, hanging on to the lifelines. They got swept out of the lifelines and down into the cockpit. And he twisted his ankle, and she tweaked her shoulder. She was hanging on the lifelines as she was being thrown out of them. So she kind of injured her shoulder. So we had of 7, we were down 3 crew in short order. And that on top of the waves, confused sea state, we all got wet and then dry and wet again. and we were into a double reef and no head sail. Actually, we were sailing with a double reef main alone. We also broke our tiller extension and repaired it, and it failed. The repairs failed twice. So we just went through a lot of challenges, and ultimately, what you said is pretty true. Mother Nature rules the day,
right.
And we got to a point where it was time to power up again, put a jib on, and because the wind dropped to 20. And the crew was pretty well defeated at that point by Mother Nature. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm to put up another sail.
It was a crazy one. I was on a J120, and I've done about 12 of them now. And this was by far the most pressure we've seen. It was, I think this was one of the races that a lot of people got tested, their rigs, their sailing, and their grit. Because 84 boats dropped out. It was pretty wild.
It's crazy.
Lots going on in the sail racing community, as you can see. I heard a story this past week that I found to be relatively interesting. We had called a couple years ago to find out transient usage of various yacht clubs when you go from one club to another, and how you're able to use their facilities and enjoy the Great Lakes. And the reciprocals that kind of come with that are pretty cool. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of record keeping. I'm sure there are reservations to be made. But as we talked to 6 or 7 clubs this week, kind of is if you call and show up ahead of time, you get the first night free and off you go. We had a situation this past weekend, and I was really shocked. And the folks at the Detroit Yacht Club made the decision that money probably trumped, I'm not sure what the word would be, but it was we had a couple of friends who have a very large boat who paid $4.75 for a transient fee that for a 42-foot boat, if figured out, is about $185 to spend the night at DYC, and they were only about 3 hours away. Now, we called a number of yacht clubs today, and for the most part, we've had 14 reservations in 7 yacht clubs. So, yes, transient business gets done. And in 7 of the 8 cases, we found out that it's pretty much free the first night. And if you know somebody, it's probably free the second night. It's kind of one of those unwritten, everybody kind of takes care of everybody. But we were kind of shocked that DYC charged $475, and then they wanted some more money to use the pool. I have the receipt, so I know that what it cost. I just thought that was a little crazy, and I just thought it was a story that you might want to hear. And if anybody from DYC wants to answer this and kind of go from there, then we can have that conversation. But I just found it to be interesting. So up next, we're going to talk a little bit about paper yacht clubs. And Kevin Srigley from the Petoskey Yacht Club is going to join us. We had a chance to spend some time with him last week right there in the Petoskey Harbor. And he's going to tell us what they're doing with their club and kind of go from there. So up next is Kevin Srigley. Kevin has started Petoskey Yacht Club, which is a paper yacht club. And the reason we're having this conversation, Kevin, is that one of the ways to grow the sport is the non-traditional way. This is not necessarily non-traditional, but it's certainly growing the sport. So give us you're obviously a harbor, you're a Petoskey guy through Pittsburgh for work and kind of back sitting in this unbelievable harbor as is typical. But explain how this whole thing started and give us an insight.
So, I was actually in Pittsburgh thinking a little bit about it and thought, you know what, Petoskey's never had a yacht club. So I talked to a couple of good buddies of mine, Gil Whitman and Bill Seguin, who are both avid boaters, and we got together and said, I got this crazy idea, what do we think about doing a Petoskey Yacht Club? That was in July of 2023. We had our first event at Ron's Bar and Backyard here in Petoskey, and we ended up signing up about 50 members that night. And so it's been a tiger by the tail, and now as we sit here in July of 2026, we have 280 memberships and about 450 total members.
It shocked you that it grew that fast, that quick?
It really did, honestly. You know, this is an idea that I'm sure people had before, but never really took off with it, and it's really taken off like crazy. I think our people are really just enjoying the opportunity to connect with other people that love the water.
There are a number of clubs in the Grand Rapids area, there are a number of clubs in the Detroit area that are paper clubs, and
Yep.
it just gives people an opportunity that, you know, so we're obviously sitting in Petoskey Harbor, one of the best harbors obviously in the DNR system here, watching a boat back in. Just out of curiosity, power to sail, do you guys distinguish between the two, or is it just...
We really don't.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, a lot of the focus, Greg, is on social and connection. As I mentioned, there's really 3 areas we look to connect. One of them is obviously connecting with the water. We are so fortunate in northern Michigan to have these amazing waterways. Connecting with people. Obviously, a lot of new friends and old friends get together, and an opportunity to meet new people, and then giving back and connecting to the community.
Okay, I have to tell you my reason for joining, and I have...
Yes.
I'll show you the hat. We'll show you the hat later. I joined because it's always cool to see a yacht club when you're racing. Some of the real big guys have 4 or 5 yacht clubs listed behind their name.
Sure.
I don't have the money to be able to afford, but this is an affordable opportunity to join. So mine was a little bit of a ruse. But then I saw the pictures that I missed. We were coming to the last social,
Okay.
which was down in Lake Walloon area.
Yeah, Walloon Lake Watershed, yeah.
And I saw the pictures of the food. The food was worth 12 times what we would have paid to get in.
That's right.
I was shocked at how good the food looked. I was so pissed off because it was one of those things. But I also saw the smiles on the faces, and that's kind of the point.
It really is.
It's a remarkable job in a short term. Give me some long-term ideas. Is there a point where the club can, limit membership, or is it just wherever it goes?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of different levels of membership, but the reason wasn't really to cap it so much. We just wanted to make sure, we're only 3 years old, so we wanted to make sure we delivered value to the members, and so we were managing growth for a while. We have expanded up to 300 members as the cap now. We're at about 280. And the reason for that is just making sure we delivered great value. So long term, I mean, we've started a capital reserve. We do have dreams of sometime having a physical home.
Okay.
But in the meantime, again, we're really looking at just connecting with the water community and connecting with people.
With the cost of waterfront in northern Michigan,
Right.
How far is that a dream for maybe when we're both dead?
Yeah, well, it may be, and it may, you never know. It might not be on the waterfront. I mean, we really, we've talked to the city about some ideas. We continue to just keep our eyes open. It doesn't necessarily have to be right on the water here in Petoskey. I mean, it could be one in the adjacent communities, because we've got people in the club from Lake Charlevoix, from Walloon Lake, from Crooked Lake, from obviously Lake Michigan and Harbor and Petoskey. So we draw a pretty wide crowd from the greater Petoskey region.
Obviously, it's grown quickly. What has been sort of your happy point of looking at something different other than growth? What have you been surprised by?
Yeah.
And then what sort of makes you smile by that surprise?
Well, I think I've been a little surprised, or we've been surprised by how much people enjoy the connection. I mean, I didn't realize when you get from 0 to 450 in basically 3 years, you obviously tapped into something. And I think what we tapped into is people looking for a way to connect. So for me, that's been probably the big surprise is how quickly it took off.
I wonder if there's something that sort of intrinsic to you that was valuable, that that maybe, wow, we've done something special.
Yeah, I think just the appreciation of the members and just saying, hey, you guys are really doing a great job. We have a lot of events. I've been really proud of what we've done for the community, quite frankly. As an example of that, we've done a couple of years of sponsoring some sailors at Little Traverse Sailors in Harbor.
Oh, that's cool.
Petoskey kids who otherwise wouldn't be able to go financially.
Right.
We had a really cool cleanup earlier this year down at Tannery Creek here on Little Traverse Bay. And I don't know if you've seen them, but we also were able to partner with the city to add some life rings on the break wall this year in partnership with the city of Petoskey to make it a little safer out there. So those things feel really good too.
If you look at the demographics of the community, it is really a growing community. Mm-hmm. There's lots of folks buying houses up here, and it may not necessarily be their first house.
Right.
But a social organization like this offers a lifeline to folks who spend their summers up here.
That's right.
And if you don't have friends, if you don't know anybody, it's a perfect opportunity to have that chance.
It really is, and we've had a lot of people who've created new friendships from the club, which is always exciting to see. You mentioned affordable earlier in our discussion, Greg. You know, we're $75 initiation, $75 a year. So this is not a traditional entry fee for a yacht club, and I think that's a part of it where people say, why not? I'll give it a try and meet some new people that love the water like I do.
Have you looked at your roster to find out who's the farthest away member?
I have. Last time I looked, we had Denver, who's a seasonal visitor here, and we've got some people in Florida for sure, but it's a mix. I don't know anybody internationally yet, but West Coast and the South for sure.
We had a chance to have a conversation with Ben because of our skiing connection. Ben Dorbas is a member, was one of your flag members.
Yep.
And he talked so highly of it, and it turns out after meeting you, I can understand why the organization's growing so fast.
Thank you.
Really sterling folks, and an opportunity to, again, sort of get together and have those social opportunities. They're pretty cool. Just curiosity, what kind of boat do you have?
35-foot Island Packet.
Okay.
Yeah, older sailboat, cruising boat. So yeah, my wife and I enjoy some trips in northern Michigan. Ben, by the way, is a fabulous guy. He's one of our trustees and has been a really good contributor to kind of shape what the club actually looks like and feels like.
Well, hopefully we're going to get to the August 14th social. I'm not sure if we can work that to schedule. We're trying really hard because we missed the last one after seeing the food.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to have that opportunity. So, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for taking time to talk about PYC, Greg. Appreciate it.
Every day, thousands of kids start vaping. And I can't let this happen to my kid. Of course, it's awkward to talk to kids about the dangers of vaping. Hey, bestie, how's sketches? Ready? It's hard to get their attention. Ready? Go. Yes. Look at that. You didn't turn yours over. So if you want to talk to your kids about the dangers of vaping, you got to get it trending.
No, you're doing it wrong.
Let's go.
Can we talk?
Yeah, what's up?
Visit talkaboutvaping.org for tips on when and how to have the vape talk.
We want to give you an update on the America's Cup. John Sweeney, if you're not familiar, filed a complaint with the New York Attorney General way back in March, and we picked up the trail about, essentially it is the folks running the America's Cup as we speak right now. The folks from New Zealand are kind of using the deed of gift as a profit maker when it's a trust for New York, and we've gone all through the postings. We wanted to tell you that we're pretty sure, and we know this from talking to some of the folks at the Attorney General's office, that they've actually sat down. New Zealand, the folks that are involved, the defenders, are actually sitting down with the New York Attorney General to have a conversation about how they're moving forward to be able to deal with the deed of gift. And I could spend 4 hours explaining it, except to suggest there is some law within New York's constitution that allows for the New York Attorney General to allow people to come forward. You've seen a lot of stuff online with boats being raced and kind of moving up the schedule. The schedule is about 4 or 5 months ahead of time. And they're doing that, we think, because they want to make sure that this thing gets done. But the negotiations right now are going on to figure out what's going to happen. And we don't know what the Attorney General is going to do. We're hoping that there is some common sense process to this. And we will keep you up to date. And until the Attorney General comes out publicly, he was just given a list of 50 complaints that have happened over the last 4 cups, and was thanking the author of some of that information. So we know something's coming. We just don't know where and when. And everybody's speculating. And the fact of the matter is, with the exception, we know that they're now meeting and having conversations. I don't know, to avoid fines or whatever it might be, but they're at least sitting at the same table discussing some things. So let's hope they can work something out, make it reasonable for everybody, and get on with what could be the best sporting spectacle in terms of history and culture on the globe. So we will bring you that as we get through things, and we'll go from there. I want to thank Kevin and Chris, and congratulate certainly the Mockingbird crew for their great season, and all the folks with the GL-52. We think that's terrific. We certainly want to also mention folks from John Hunan Katana and Mr. Askew and the folks from Wizard taking their boats over to the Mediterranean. We wish them the best of luck. The fall is coming, and it's still good, crisp weather to sail. It's been hot lately, but we hope you enjoy that sailing, and we'll bring you our look at the 70s next week. We hope that maybe we can get a conversation with Bill Lee, who built the Santa Cruz 70s, and we'll get that conversation going, we hope, this week, and kind of ask him a little bit how the 70s were designed, and we'll bring that conversation to you, we hope, next week, along with spending an afternoon on Ohana. So for all those in the back room, we appreciate your time. We'll see you next week.